Okay, I'd like to call the Social Equity Committee meeting to order at 4:01. Chris, if you could do roll call, please.
Sure. Council Member Such,
Here.
Council Member Garaventa,
Here.
Committee Member Toon.
I see her.
I see her as well. Committee Member Coleman,
Here.
Committee Member Duez,
He told me he might be a little bit late, so, but he would be here.
okay. Committee Member Mansfield,
And I haven't.
don't see her. And Committee Member Morales.
Here.
Okay, I'm going to open this up to public comment. You may speak to anything not on the agenda, which means you may speak to anything besides the resolution. And your time will be limited to 3 minutes. And I will open it to public comments again later in the meeting, just so you know that. And I just, again, want to remind people about civility. I think that we do our best work when it is civil. And so please, if you could try to refrain from, hurtful language. Thank you. Okay, Chris, has anyone raised their hands?
I do not see anybody with their hand raised. If you're on the phone, it is *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. I do not see, oh, there's somebody. How about Sabine Tischler?
Okay, Sabine. I don't see that.
Hi.
Oh.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for letting me speak. So one of the issues I've been seeing in the committee and some of the public comments is a lack of understanding of what racism is and what white supremacy is. And both of them are racial constructs that by definition are systemic. So systemic racism and racism, there's no real difference about it because as a social structure, it's created by those in power, by culture, by media, just through all the interactions that we as humans have amongst each other. So when discussing systemic racism, we're discussing the cultural patterns that also infiltrate government, law enforcement, and other agencies and just permeate our culture. And thus, white supremacy is the overall, when people brought up Western civilization like the Proud Boys, which I believe William Atkins had brought up, one of the previous callers last week had mentioned, when people are spouting about Western civilization, they're talking about white culture because that is what the dominant structural culture that extends to, not only in our country, but in all the countries that we've colonized and have touched upon, influenced through economic trade and whatnot. Sorry, I'm trying to catch my thought here. So white supremacy extends more than just, it's not the KKK. It's how we view and define gender and queer people. It's why we've made heteronormativity, such heterosexual, cisgendered men as kind of the assumed default. It's why in the medical industry, there's concepts of that Black people have thicker skin and thus they've actually received less care in the medical field. There are a lot of systemic issues that exist because of white supremacy that the United States was founded in. So it's not, when discussing white supremacy or systemic racism, it's not individuals who might be racist, but we all exist in a culture that is founded in racism. And so it's our duty to, if we don't want to live under that, to actually talk about it and address it and not hide or be afraid from these tough conversations. Thank you.
Thanks, Sabine. Anyone else like to speak?
I see somebody with a phone number 5354 at the end. If you *6 to unmute.
Hi, Sabine. I noticed you doxed me. It's very typical of people like you. And you call other people fascist. That's special. I'll start off with something else, though. If Karen Wood has a concern about somebody with a Confederate flag, if I have a street, I may go knock on their door and ask them where they're coming from and not mention why. I'd be willing to do that if I can arrange my schedule to do so. And maybe there's something to worry about and maybe not. Now, back on the other subject, it's been popular with certain people to try to do the guilt by association thing. I have to be inside Courthouse Park during the Black Lives Matter event. So if I'm a bad person, well, all you people in the park, you were associated with me because I was right in the middle of you. I did mention Proud Boys. They do definitely disavow racism, Nazism. I could bring up quotes, but I'm not going to bother. The same can be said for Patriot Prayer. I noticed that Patriot Prayer also had weekly events to feed the homeless. And yet Sabine Tisler seems to be of a mind to go, apparently he says to have photographic evidence for getting hit by Tiny Tootsie Toilet, who he also knows all about. So apparently Sabine appears to have driven for hours to get to an event like that because there's been no such thing close to here. And then get in somebody's face and get in a physical conflict and be talking about how other people are the bad people. I don't think so. Very inconsistent. And as far as all the systemic stuff, nah, never going to buy that, Sabine. Everybody's an individual. I'm here for the smallest minority of all. That's the individual, Sabine. Done for now.
Okay, up next is Pat.
Hi, Pat.
Hi, I just have a procedural comment. I'm just wondering if Jim and Colette, as committee members, can
Oh, sorry.
put their video on.
I didn't realize I had. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Is Jim there?
He is.
I guess. Hello?
Hello.
Oh, there you are. Anyway, I'm just wondering if you could put your video on. Just
Well, I'm it's
okay, that's all right. I just wanted to say it's nice when attending these meetings that the board members or the committee members put their video on. I would appreciate it. Thank you.
well, I'm kind of in a spot in the house where it's not that nice, so that's kind of the real reason why. I mean,
Okay.
you can see me. Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Jim.
Hi. It's just that I'm kind of in a bad spot that's got a lot of junk in it, and I don't want to show off my junk. So I may go on and off from time to time.
Okay. Pat, is that it? Yeah. Okay. All right. Chris?
Sorry, I was muted.
all right.
Megan Mills is next.
Okay. Hi, Megan.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. My name is Megan Mills, and I will identify myself by name and show my face. And I appreciate people who are willing to do that. I'd like to thank Bill Atkins at 5354 for showing up and speaking his mind. I just think it's really appropriate to, at a public meeting, making public comment, identify oneself so that it can be part of the record. And so that's what I'm doing, and would ask that others do the same, just out of courtesy and respect for the civic process. First of all, I'd like to really thank you and affirm the decision to have public meetings available via Zoom so that members of the public who are disabled or chronically ill who cannot attend in person are still able to participate in a public meeting process. That's important to me, and I really thank you for doing that. And then just to address some of the previous comments about features of white supremacy, one of the features of white supremacy is individualism. So as one of the previous speakers said, Mr. Atkins, the individual is the most important feature, maybe in Western white society, but not collectively around the world. So in dismantling white supremacy, we need to think about more than the individual. We need to think about systems, and we need to think about power and privilege. That's one of the ways that we dismantle it, is to discuss it. Nobody's coming for individuals, and if you're so worried about it, maybe it's time to question what you are doing or what you're invested in that you're so afraid about. So, you know, as a person who's engaged in the civic process, I'm here to show up and to speak up on behalf of myself, my family, my community, and just say, I am not afraid to identify systemic racism and have a conversation about it. I think it's mandatory and imperative that members of the community talk about systems of harm. White supremacy is one. There are many others. Another one is ableism, which is a feature of white supremacy as well. And that is putting up barriers and obstructions to people participating in civic processes because they have some sort of disability or mental disorder or any other number of things, chronic illness. Maybe someone has an suppressed immune system and doesn't want to be exposed to the Delta variant of the COVID virus. So those are a few of the reasons why someone may not want to show up in person. It's not, it doesn't need to be explained. I just would ask that it be considered for other public meetings such as City Council. This one, I so appreciate the opportunity to be involved, and I see that I have 30 seconds left, so I'll wrap up. I'm in full support of the resolution and would like to see this committee go back to the work of the committee, the function, the statement that was proposed at the beginning to create a resolution condemning racism and social injustice and social inequity in our community. I fully support that, and I'm so grateful to be part of this civic process. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan.
And Pablo is next.
Can I say something real quickly before Pablo says something? It's a point of order, really, or a point of, I guess it's, well, since no one's stopping me, let me make it clear. I just want to make everyone know that according to the Brown Act, that we aren't required. I mean, in fact, we're not allowed to ask as the chair and the government part of it, the co-chair, if I'm co-chair, however that is, the name or ask the person to identify themselves when they give public comment. I just want to make that part of it clear. That doesn't mean that, you know, other people can say, you know, ask others to do so. It's entirely up to the thing. But I just want to make sure that the law that everyone's aware of the law that we can't ask for it. Matter of fact, one of our longtime council members kept asking people for their name when they came up, and we kept having to remind him that he can't do that as a official. So just want to make that clear, that we can't ask for names as a person that's running a meeting. Whatever anyone speaks to, wanting people to identify themselves, that's all part of the public comment. That's okay. Just want to make that clear.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Pablo, you're up.
Hi, Pablo.
Cool, thank you. Hi. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, right, as new voices are coming into the meetings or more people are representing, you know, part of the community that's saying, you know, maybe this is not working or we need to stay away from critical theory. I think it's important to kind of revisit this. I spoke of the the council meeting for Sonora. And I'm sorry, Colette and Jim, that you're going to hear the same thing again. But I think it's important that this group hears it. And I think it's again, there has to be some work done about trying to understand critical theory, especially for the council members. There's this idea that critical theory, is this or that, and I would invite all of the council to spend time understanding how critical theory is a major part of academia, how it argues as that a lot of social problems are influenced by societal structures, cultural assumptions, like Sabina was talking about. And within critical theory, it's not just critical race theory. There's a whole bunch of other aspects of it. You have things such as post-colonialism, right, which it focuses on the influence of colonial literature and structures and how that affects historical conflict. Postmodernism, which is 20th century criticisms, concerns of the views of what is the deviant and what is the other. Post-structuralism, so there's all kinds of crit, is feminism that focuses on gender. So I think if you're going to have people talking about, this is bad, I would invite, so I think that's important discussion, right? First of all, but second of all, I invite people that talk about it to explain what are you talking about? What theory are you referring to? And then tell us why it's not good, right? I think, when we're talking about social equity, it's super important to talk about critical race theory in the sense that it's the intersection of race and law, right? That's what we're here to discuss, is how certain policies affect certain minorities disproportionately, right? I think, talking about post-colonialism is especially relevant in this county because we have an indigenous group, right? And they were directly affected historically. And so I would like to see the discussion kind of really bring in those topics because we have communities here that are directly affected by those theories, right? And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Anyone else? Their hand?
No, there's nobody else. I think we're
Okay.
set.
Okay, thanks. So now we're on to the resolution. I assume that you all received the table. And I want to make a correction on it. Wherever I said, I put the initials AG, it's supposed to be AM. I don't know what I was thinking, so I apologize, Elisa. And so what I was wondering, I just sort of as a procedure today, this document starts with really May 10th, which is when we first talked about this at the previous, about this resolution. At the previous meeting we did have we saw the resolutions that were, some of the resolutions that we're working with, not all. But we spent most of the rest of that meeting talking about the workshop. So we didn't talk about the resolution at all. So really this work started on May 10th. And I just thought we could just kind of go through it in order and just as a group decide what we liked that has been discussed, what we didn't like that's been discussed. And just sort of to organize our thoughts and to sort of come on the same page and then be able to move forward with this. I also would like everyone to let me know if I've omitted something or if I've written it incorrectly, because that certainly was never my intention, or if I didn't give it the right kind of, just if there's some way, if there's something that you would like said differently than the way that I wrote it. I was trying to be pretty, I was trying to actually transcribe our conversations word by word. Mercedes, you had your hand up, but you've taken it down? No? No? Okay.
It looks like you did a lot of work.
It was a mistake, sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I spent a little bit of time on it. It's as I review it, I can always be my own worst critic. So I found mistakes, but thanks, Nathan. So how do people feel about that? Does that make sense? Does that feel a little more structured and not just sort of bouncing around on all of this? My columns are imperfect. you know, I started out thinking I needed columns and a certain number of columns, and I didn't perfectly stick to it. I'm sorry about that, but too confining. And also hopefully people of the public have also been able to access this document so you can kind of follow along. And also I would welcome comments from the public, later. So at first I just listed on 429, the 5 resolutions that we had at that point. And then on May 10th, we added 3 more. I think that everyone has liked the Nevada City resolution. I don't think it's complete for us, and we have to also put it in our own language for our own community. But and those were actually Nikki's comments, that it needed to be broadened and it needed to reflect this community. And then the next box is Mercedes, and she talked about 3 key components. And Mercedes, if you would like to talk about this, you can, or I will talk about it. Just that the resolution should include 3 key components: to be intentional and focusing on racial equity. And also, and I agree with this, to be very clear and specific about equity versus equality. Knowing that for some, equity is a it challenges some people. And also to be concentrate on changing policies and systems. Public and private policies have been shaped by frameworks steeped in racist beliefs and bias, like segregation, unfair treatment of tribal nations, immigrants, struggles endured in our county, et cetera. And then consistently incorporating community engagement into the work. And I think that's critical. I think and I would welcome more community engagement in the present, but also critical in the future, so that this is actually a living document and not just something that's hung on the wall. And any comments about any of that? Anyone? No?
Just to reiterate what Nathan said, I just wanted to thank you for this work, Colette. I know how much work you put into this. It's obvious. It looks like you had to go back and rewatch videos and write things down. So thank you for organizing this for us and putting it in a way that's so visual. And I just wanted to comment on when we're talking about the city of Nevada, kind of that opening line that we really liked. And then I think next to it in the chart, I commented that I did think it was that we should modify it. I think if you scroll down to our meeting on the 14th, that kind of shows the work we did to sort of modify that opening statement so that it fits Sonora. But I just wanted to note that that was there if we wanted to maybe look at something, starting with something like that as our opening statement. And that is whereas the city of Sonora affirms their wish to be known as not only for the beauty of its place in the Sierra Nevada foothills and its vibrant gold country history, the city also wishes to be known to be a champion of racial equity, justice, and acceptance.
I just want to make sure everyone knows that was June 14th.
Yeah, June 14th.
Looking
Sorry, maybe I didn't say June.
All right. That's all right.
But yeah, I love this process of kind of going through it and seeing what we can stick with. And yeah, thank you for this work.
I like that opening. Any other thoughts about that or additions?
Yeah, I just like to say a couple of comments about after reviewing this whole table and all the comments and what we have been doing. I find that some common ideas, some common main ideas, like we all at some point spoke about the importance of including things about Sonora culture and history, meaning the First Nations, the Gold Rush history, and the racial profiling, exclusion, and mistreatment in that era. And then another main idea is creating a bridge to navigate the present and the future. And we talked several times about ongoing dialogue, inclusivity, education, advocacy, culturally responsiveness. Another main idea that we have been talking about through all the meetings was racial equity, work that involves commitment to healing the wounds of racism and inequities in our community, which refers to the culture and history, which is not for discussion, right? I mean, we all know what happened to the Native Americans. We all know what happened during the gold rush. At the beginning of the gold rush, there were like 11,000 non-Native Americans, not indigenous, that were of either Spanish or Mexican heritage. And by the end of the gold rush history, they were like 3%. And the percentage of the Native Americans were lower than that. So during that era, there were policies that were created to intentionally exclude these groups. So, and that is history. So we all talk about not repeating the past and creating a bridge to navigate the present and the future. And also, I think that we all have talked at some point about incorporating community engagement. We have some specific identify outcomes that the city council approved, which I believe should be included in the declaration, in the resolution, like review and possible updates on racial sensitivity, trainings, and community partner engagement. These are identified outcomes approved by the city council. So I believe that in the most important section that speaks about actions, those are actions that need to be included. And I just calling everyone to take a little distance from the city's resolutions and to create our own words, to create our own sentiments here. And this to be aspirational. There are some things that doesn't exist yet, but that is what we are aspiring to see. Thank you for listening to what I had to say.
To touch on what you were saying there, Mercedes, I actually wrote one up. I was talking with one of the lefties this week. I had a few phone calls, not as bad as last week, but the one I wrote was something that we talked about a lot. And what I wrote was, whereas Sonora City will be known for our great community, our values, and our inclusiveness for all its community or all its residents, or however it needs to be chopped up and moved around. But it was something that sat really good about being positive with our community. We're doing this for the 99% of good too. I want to represent some of the people here in our community who are really good. So that one I really liked. When I sat down and talked about it, we wrote it up. really resonated with me well. It can be chopped up and changed. It can add, it can subtract, but it really stems to the point our community is a good community and we need to show that. Thanks.
I don't know if we're still raising our hands, but yeah. Oh, you're muted, Colette.
Yes, please do raise your hands. That would be lovely. Thanks. Nikki?
Yeah, I want to echo a little bit of what Darren and Mercedes just mentioned, and with kind of the conversation in mind that we had last week about celebrating the good as well and honoring that as well. There are certainly great things that are happening with our city departments, and I highlighted one of those in my committee reports last week, and being so thankful that Sonora PD reached out to us at the Pride celebration. The City Council has, I'm so grateful, allowed us to start this social equity work. So I do want to celebrate those wins, and I do want to acknowledge those. And so one of the things we talked about previously was really kind of listing those action items. And so with the conversation in mind from last week and this kind of bridge that we're talking about, which I really love that direction we're moving in. One therefore statement that I wrote is therefore the City of Sonora, in partnership with the Social Equity Committee and Community Engagement, will work to identify any existing disparities and systemic barriers in city departments, while also celebrating existing efforts and processes that foster diversity, inclusion, and acceptance. Just wanted to share that.
I was trying to write that down.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that as well. Mercedes.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
go Nathan, because
Well, I was just
have
going to
spoke
ask.
already.
Sure, I was just going to ask if Nikki, if you could read that resolution again. Sorry. I heard it the first time. I wanted to make sure I understand it.
Sure. So it's a therefore statement. Therefore, the City of Sonora, in partnership with the Social Equity Committee and Community Engagement, will work to identify any existing disparities and systemic barriers in city departments, while also celebrating existing efforts and processes that foster diversity, inclusion, and acceptance.
Thank you.
What did you think of that, Nate? Did you have any thoughts about that, Nathan? You just wanted to hear it again?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot there. I'm a visual person, so but that's okay. I just wanted to hear it again. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
And I appreciate you saying that, Nathan, because I am also a visual person. So I would rather have like the whiteboard so we can see what we are talking.
Mary Rose is off today and tomorrow, just so people know that. That's why she's not here. Okay, so Mercedes.
Yeah, thank you. So regarding what I was saying about the culture and talking about the past, but creating a bridge to the present and the future, I would like to read a couple of statements. So it's the City of Sonora acknowledges that the original inhabitants of this land were the Miwok, who still today contribute in a significant manner in spite of the violence perpetrated against them at local and national level. Second statement, the City of Sonora acknowledges that is proud of the gold rush history, which created opportunities to many people. It also recognized that that period showed racial profiling, exclusion, and mistreatment, of indigenous, Chinese, Mexicans, and other minorities. Third statement. The city of Sonora condemns the past racial profiling, exclusion, and mistreatment of minorities, and it envisions the present and the future be different, taking steps to make sure that racial profiling and act of aggression will have no place anymore in this community. The city of Sonora commits to be intentionally inclusive, fostering an atmosphere of inclusiveness and community engagement to respect all residents and visitors. And I'm going to stop there. It is a lot to just hear. Yeah, I wish we could see.
Nathan, just go for it. She's not watching the screen.
Okay. Well, Mercedes, I was just curious, your statement, were you wanting that to be part of the resolution that we produce? Okay.
Right. Yeah, that is what I mean by acknowledging the past and creating a bridge to the present and the future.
Okay.
Darren.
Because that was so long, Mercedes, and I went over a lot of it in my head. Is there ways that we can, again, I know I'm one of those keep it simple. Is there a way to bring that down a little bit, say exactly what you said, but a lot easier on the ears and eyes when you're reading? It was a lot to comprehend with 3. I think the first one and the third one were like pretty easy interpretation. Second one, someone send that to me so I can reread that. I'd like to read that again, but can we bring it down just a little bit, the length?
Yeah, it is written like in the form, in the template of the resolution. So it's like the word one, and then the second and the third, and at the end, I think I will send these to Mary Rose so she can share with all, yeah, for next meeting.
Yes, please.
Also, I will keep this table updated. I'll add everything that from each meeting, so it will be, this meeting should be pretty easy for me to get updated this week, actually, so.
Thank you, Colette.
But
And
do send
one,
videos, that's easier.
yeah, one thing that is very short and maybe will be easier to hear. So at the end of that draft, I wrote something similar to what you said, Nikki. In consultation with the Sonora Equity Committee, the city of Sonora will, within 120 days, create a plan to work towards social and racial equity, and will update the community on the development of the initiative every 6 months.
Okay. Just sort of moving on in this table on the first, the last box on the first page. The city will denounce all forms of hate, racist, or other discriminatory language and violent extremism. Darren, you didn't like violent extremism. Oh, your hand's up. Hi, Darren.
You made me forget.
Sorry.
The action plan, that's what I was going off of. The action plan that Mercedes had, can we do something to change that? Because as I'm seeing, I hate to be the salty one here, but we're done after we're done with our tasks. We can't re-update every 6 months because we won't be here. So is there a way to work that, Mercedes, that it's maybe the city council that will do that? Maybe it's a group that gets together. Maybe it's community members. There's some way that people can get together, because in 6 months, it's great. We may still be here and we may be able to have that, but 6 months after that's a year, and the social equity only goes until, you know, we're done with our tasks. So is there a way to maneuver that better?
I think that everything is on the table, right?
Yes. Yes. And we can, you know, all work on that. And certainly the council will work on that as well. So.
I just don't think it's going to be every 6 months. We don't, there's tons of stuff we need to review all the time. And it usually is not every 6 month reviews process, even for regular council business, probably be a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nikki?
I think that I just wanted to say that I like the idea of putting some time frame and some meat on the bone there, and having, we need to have some kind of measurability and a way to really measure these goals and this vision that we're writing in our resolution. I definitely think we can massage the details and the numbers later, but I do think it is crucial to our work to have some accountability in that form, by way of time frame and really listing out and being explicit about the work that will come from the resolution, after the resolution.
Right. Okay. Darren, violent extremism.
I'm here. Sorry, my cat was screaming from downstairs. For some reason, I had to go.
I saw you. So the city denounces all forms of hate, racist or discriminatory language, and violent extremism. And you didn't like it, violent extremism. You talk about that?
The word violent extremism, because not all extremism comes in the word in terms of violence. There can be extremism without violence. And I get we don't tolerate violent extremism, but it gets to that point of, do we tolerate regular extremism? So that's why any extremism, blanket coat, not necessarily just saying that.
I don't know. I don't want to say we don't tolerate any extremism necessarily. I mean, because that's a slippery slope. Violent extremism, certainly. But I mean, you know, we've all been extreme, and I don't want to say that we won't tolerate that. I don't know. That's just, those are my thoughts about that. But certainly I think we, as the Social Equity Committee, do not want to tolerate violent extremism. I mean, I don't disagree with that, but.
Yeah, I don't see that being such a big issue other than interpretation again, but we don't want any type of violence, any type of violent extremism, any type of extremism that hurts, maims. You know, you get your free speech, but you know, morals and ethics should come into some of that as well, that some people just don't have.
Yeah, true. Okay, next page.
Whoa. Just a second before we go back to, what about, I'm always the wordsmith. So instead of violent extremism, how about related violence? So the related would obviously be relating to hate, racism, discriminatory language. And that way or are we looking more for a qualification for extremism? Just putting that out there.
Highlight and we come back to
Nathan. Or Nathan. I'm sorry.
Nathan's the word guy here. That's the one I would I'd like to pass that buck to.
Well, I would just say that the problem with the word extremism is that it's a political word that everyone throws around. So, you know, to certain people, if you voted for Trump, you're an extremist. And for other people, if you voted for Hillary or Bernie or whomever, you're an extremist. So the word just gets thrown around like mud, and it almost means nothing at this point. So, of course, I'm against any form of violence, but I could go either way on that statement. I do like Jim's phrase, though, related violence. I think that's better. but it's not something I'll fight over.
Nikki, since it was your writing, what are your thoughts?
She's muted.
I'm visiting my notes.
Oh.
I think that was one that came from Placerville.
Placerville. Okay.
And I'm just happy for the city to denounce violence related to racism at all. So I'm okay with the city denounce all forms of hate, racist or discriminatory language, and related violence.
I actually like that, and it's not.
That sounds good.
And it doesn't.
Yeah.
That doesn't trigger the way violent extremism.
I totally agree.
I'm on board with
Good
that
job,
one.
Jen.
Thanks for not letting me turn the page. All right. The next one was set a benchmark for policies. This was you, Mercedes. Set a benchmark for policies. What disparities exist? How do we word? Must review with a lens of equity. And certainly we must review with a lens of equity. And I don't, I mean, and a benchmark certainly for policies. I don't know how we're going to review those at this point yet, but that's our next task after we complete this. So we sort of need to figure that out. So I will start. I did some reading about this earlier. I'll start reading about this again, just because I do think we need to put some of that language in this resolution.
What page are you on?
Yeah, and one example of setting
Just a second. We're on page 2. We're on the second page. It's the back, the page,
I'm
the top.
scrolling on the actual agenda thing, so.
So then it's page 3,
Okay.
very top of page 3. Because the agenda's page 1, and then the rest is the spreadsheet or whatever you want to call it, and it's the second page of the spreadsheet.
Okay.
Right at the very top, MT,
Mercedes.
just before Fresno resolution.
Copy.
So Mercedes, I interrupted you.
It's okay. That was needed. So Doreen can find that. So I remember a couple months ago when the city council was working on the strategic plan. I remember that there was something that was included that has to do this with equity, and something about that we have been talking about in our committee. So that is a way to include some of these things into the work that the city council is doing. So I think that we don't have the details right now of how we are going to create a benchmark for that. But I think that we all agree that we need some indicators. We need to probably review some of the current policies, or we need to review some of the data that exists in the city. Maybe something, there are so many things that we could review, but those are details that I think we can iron later, but we need some benchmark.
Yeah. I'll read our strategic plan and see what the language is there, because if we could use that language, that would be perfect. Okay. So, and the next one is is part of the Fresno resolution, and I really liked, we call on all communities to courageously work towards healing and recovery. I think that's, and that may have been yours, Nikki. I can't remember, but I loved the work courageously, because I think this work does require courage. And then Mercedes, you talked about actionable steps, transparent, community-driven work with other local agencies also doing this work. The ones that come to mind are Columbia College Center for Nonviolent Community, Martin Luther King Jr., TCRC, and others, and certainly others.
Yeah, probably ADCA,
Ad-
probably, yeah.
Okay. And then just to be mindful, to be careful with the tone of our language and resolution when we talk about things like implicit bias. It's a painful and triggering word, which is what people have been talking about tonight already. And how do we present this resolution without being exclusive, but unifying? Mercedes.
Just going back a little bit to the last point about community engagement, I want to remind us that one of the identified outcomes approved by the City Council is community partner engagement to ensure proper circulation of racial and diversity sensitive material for the community at large. So we would be within the boundaries of what the City Council approve for the committee to do.
Oh, Darren?
Quickie public comment. We're almost out of time.
Yeah, that was going to be my next,
Okay.
because we also need to do
I have a few after that.
committee reports.
Yeah.
Okay, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to cut this off here, go to to public comment, and then committee reports. An hour is not very long. And I will update this and get this out to you this week, just so you know. So Chris, can you open it up to public comment?
Okay, yep. I do not see anybody at this second. Oh, there's Pablo Lopez again.
Hi, Pablo.
Hi. Something that I'd like to maybe add in to the resolution that could be useful is a definition of a hate incident versus a hate crime, right? Because when we're talking about hate crimes as opposed to like First Amendment rights of freedom of speech, there's a really important distinction, right? And a lot of the community issues revolve around, there's a big group, right, that are pro First Amendment, which is great. I am too. But there is an important distinction, and that distinction is that a hate crime has to be specifically a crime, right? So what a lot of the stuff that we see in our community are hate incidents. Hate incidents are oftentimes non-criminal acts that are based on people's perceived race, nationality, religion, sexual orientation, gender, stuff like that, and they're often come in the form of displays of offensive material or like verbal abuse, name calling, stuff like that, right? So it's not enough for for the police to engage or do anything about it because they don't constitute as crimes, right? And so when we're talking about social equity, I think an important thought is how do we balance education for the community in preventing hate incidents, right? Because hate crimes are already protected by different statutes and laws. So there's always a recourse for that, right? But hate incidents are what's difficult to target. So just like to kind of offer that point and hope to see you guys discuss it a little bit more in depth. And secondly, I just like to point out that Brisette's recommendation of racial sensitivity, community engagement, and trainings are fantastic steps in addressing not only that, but also in creating branches for future development. And I fully support that. Thank you.
Thanks, Pablo. Thanks, Pablo.
Next we have BZ Smith.
Hi, BZ.
Hi all. I sat down after a 8-hour drive from Oregon, wanted to get here on time, so I'm here now. A couple of things. I just found a website that may be useful for helping to set up benchmarks and how to establish results and define results and how to make sure that those results take the breadth and depth of the community into account. And I will, with your permission, I'll text that website to your chair, Colette. And also, just for those of you who want to take a quick look, it's called racialequityalliance.org. You may already be familiar with it, but it's definitely worth a look. And they do have a document there on how to get results when building social equity and racial equity attention in community. So a couple more things. For me, I keep wanting to be at these meetings because this work is fundamental to my belief, and I know not just my belief, the health of the belief of many people in our community for the long-term health of the people of Tuolumne County. This kind of injustice of social equity, racial inequities, racial inequity, discrimination against people who are different than us, whoever us is not healthy. It's actually a major health and mental health issue. There's massive documents right now on how COVID has really revealed what the health inequities are for people of color in our country, that largely the reason that we've seen so many Native Americans and Mexicans and Black Americans who have had stronger impact with COVID, it's because of their access to health that is related to both economic issues and also racial issues that have created barriers for them to have access to that and trust in it. That's the other thing. Okay, so that said, the other thing that just comes to mind for me whenever I think of you guys and the work that you're doing, the good work that you're doing, is the Jewish cemetery in Tuolumne County in Sonora that is right
30
behind
seconds.
the jail has been closed for ages and it shouldn't be closed anymore. And I'm going to beg for 30 more seconds because I want to read you something that was written in the 1920s by one of the leading poets of the United States, maybe in the 1930s, Carl Sandburg, who is an amazing man. And for me, it begins with this. The poem is called Primer Lesson. Look out how you use proud words. When you let proud words go, it is not easy to call them back. They wear long boots, hard boots. They walk off proud and they can't hear you calling them back. Look out how you use proud words. Thank you.
Thanks, BZ. So I don't see any more public comment. Darren, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just to kind of go over a little bit of my stuff, more community report stuff. We have all not been on the right side of the morality of conversation. Literally, we all know what Jesus said about throwing that first stone. We've all done it. I listen to comedians that are very controversial, Ralphie May, some of the other ones. People coming onto my Facebook to have a reason to hate me, and you see my posts, that's exactly what they're supposed to do. They're living rent-free in your head. You know, I can list a few that other people have done, especially with Andy Millett conversations, but I'm not going to get into that. The painting, this grand painting that people are trying to paint about me to hate because you hate me is just wrong. If this is living rent-free in your head about the things I've posted or said or done, and you haven't had a conversation and actually talked to me, most people on here have, then you don't really know me. You can't tell me what I find funny, what I find hysterical, what I find disturbing. I don't care. I won't be pressured. to take a seat or turn that right way. There's about to be an article written about me, which is going to come out. It's going to be, who knows, make it interesting, at least make it fun for me to read if you're going to put a bunch of stuff out there. But let me add to that article for you. The portion of it that you're going to want to write about now is I have chosen at this point, after talking with my wife and a few people, I'm going to run for Sonora City Council. I wasn't going to, and at this point now I'm going to. I think that I'm just tired. We all talk. I talk to the left, I talk to the right. There's some extreme left that is just absolutely crazy that I can't talk to. There is also some extreme right I don't talk to. The thing I said in the video, and someone asked me about it the other day, was what did I mean by people getting onto city council and saying positive things? And I said, oh man, I get so sick of some people getting on there. The thing is some of the people that get on there and have said great things about me are also the people that sit here and they write emails into the city trying to silence me or trying to remove me from this committee. Don't think I don't know. Obviously it's the city. You think city keeps anything secret? No. But it's so disheartening to see these people every day, day in and day out, just try to silence me because either they don't like what I'm saying, they don't want me to say anything, but I'm not going to be silent. So at this point, I'm going to run just because I can. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have anything they want to report in community reports? Nikki.
I don't want to report, but I want to say that it's kind of funny, Darren, that you are saying that you are silent, or you want to be silent, and you are using this forum like a campaign. Just that.
Nikki?
I get you. There's more behind it. I talked to Colette earlier.
Nikki?
I just wanted to revisit conversation with the committee's permission. I wanted to see if I could proceed with talking with Chairman Matheson and Chairwoman Andrea about looking at the site near the fairgrounds. If I could proceed with a conversation with that and then report back next meeting.
That would be lovely.
Thank you.
I mean, I think people have been asking for that, so yes, I think that would be fun. Anyone else?
Well, I don't know. Colette, what do you think? We got competition now. Good. It's our seats.
Let's talk.
That's my report.
All of us. Okay, Pat, I'm sorry, it's public comment.
Okay, I just want to say it's a little shocking. Oh, I can't talk?
No, it's closed to public comment.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
I'd say let her talk. You're muted, Colette.
Have I been talking this whole time as a muted person?
Pretty much.
Sorry. So it's 5:04, and there is a planning commission meeting following this meeting that Chris and Mary Rose need to. I think Mary Rose will be signing on to it. So I am going to close this meeting, and thank you all, and onward.